Good evening and welcome to another edition of Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Derbyologist, and joining me this week on a special Down to the Wire edition of Down to the Wire for the Arlington Million, we have a couple of people going to the races this week. Our normal handicapper, Candice Hare, and also joining us is Ryan Dickey. And Ryan, you are going to be going to your first Arlington Million, it sounds like.
That is correct. I am going to my first Arlington Million. I've been to Chicago plenty of times, but this is my first trip to Arlington.
And what's kind of prompting it? Has this always been on your bucket list, or?
Yeah, every year I try to knock out 3 big races that I've never been to, and this year Arlington Million was my final one of the 3. So very happy to be here with you guys tonight. Thank you very much for having me on, and I'm ready to get to it.
Good, good. Now, Candice, you're also going to be in Chicago for your first trip to Arlington?
Yep, this is my first time to Arlington, so I'm super excited.
And you've also kind of went touring across the country this year. What kind of drew you to Arlington?
For me, I think it's just the field. I mean, you know, people who follow me on Twitter know that I follow a lot of international racing, so you don't always get an opportunity like this to see so many horses come from around the globe. So that kind of what drew me to go to this meet in particular.
Well, I think for this show we're going to have a good variety of opinions here. You know, as you know, those who follow regularly, I can kind of tend to go towards a little bit of pedigree, also some trip notes, and some trainer patterns. Candice likes to kind of mix in a few things, and then Ryan is well prepared for these 4 races. And then in addition to the Arlington Pick 4, we're also going to be talking about the Alabama Stakes at Saratoga. But let's start it off, Ryan. The St. Ledger. A distance race, and for you, how do you approach it from a handicapping standpoint?
Well, like you said, it is a distance race, and the first thing that I looked at here was how well these players in this field did at distance. A lot of the European horses have gone well past this distance. Unfortunately, I'm only going to use one of them here. A lot of people do like the Pizza Man, from what I understand. He has only raced 2 races at 1.5 miles. The last was the Stars and Stripes, which was here at Arlington Park. He did win that race. So I do like the Pizza Man. 9-2 coming out of the 10 slot. I do like him on top.
Nice. Now, I know you've been doing a lot of kind of a statistical research on how the course might play, and even like where the rails are positioned or anything like that. Is there anything unique about this distance and the turf course and how it might play out?
Well, I wish there was, but no, it's going to be just your run-of-the-mill Arlington Million Festival of Racing, 62-foot temporary rail. And it's going to play true to form, so closers are your best bet. So if you find a horse that can close on the turf course, that's where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Now for this race, Candice, we're looking to your European expertise. What do you see in this St. Ledger?
For me, it was actually interesting that Ryan said he liked the Pizza Man on top, because I really didn't like the Pizza Man's last race, if I'm being honest. I thought that he had, you know, got away with some really slow fractions up front, and actually him and the horse who finished second both, you know, for the most part of that race ran 1-2. For me, out of that race, I took Suntracer, who I picked going into that race, but I really liked how he closed. He was flying late, you know, against what were really slow fractions. So in here, I went with Suntracer on top. But I find it really tough to choose between him and Dandino, who's our defending champion here. I would say not to be terribly put off by his recent form, because, you know, you look at the finishes and say, like, whoa, he finished 13 lengths back here or 10 lengths back here, but those were against the absolute, you know, cream of the crop as far as British marathoners go. I mean, Cavalryman finished first in his most recent race, and the third place finisher was Peather's Moon. Both of them came right back to win at Glorious Goodwood. So, I mean, he was running against the best of the best. And maybe he's lost, you know, a step against that type of company, but he's not going to be facing that type of company here. One I will say that is getting a lot of buzz is Eye of the Storm, but he just ran 10 days ago, I think. So I'm never really a fan of these quick turnarounds as far as horses shipping. Right after winning a race, I tend to think that maybe this was an afterthought and maybe it wasn't the plan after all. So I'm going to go Suntracer on top with Dandino second, but for myself, I'll be using both of them.
I kind of saw it the same way. Dandino, he kind of surprised me last year. I was kind of, even though he was 4-5 last year and he won the race, I was probably more impressed with Suntracer and losing it. And, in distance racing, I just remember on Belmont, I studied and studied and studied, and at the end of the day, that 2-mile race was won by a Kitten. So, to me, I got it down to the 2 Kittens pretty quickly, and Suntracer and Kitten. I'm going to go Kitten first and Suntracer second, but I'm kind of with you. I thought the Pizza Man, who I absolutely like because of the name, and he always delivers, and he runs for the dough, and every catchphrase there is, but I just don't know if he can get that kind of trip again in a race like this. Ryan, how do you envision the Pizza Man's trip in this race?
Well, the way I looked at it is I had three horses that should be battling it out. I had Big Kick, which is 6-1 shot, who's coming in fresh. I know he only raced one race past 1.5 miles, which was his last race, which is 1 3/4 miles, which he won with Victor Espinoza up. He gets James Graham, who's going to be just as good for him here. But I also like Dandino, and I think that the 3 of them come the top of the stretch, it should be those 3. Again, I'm sticking with the Pizza Man on top. I like Dandino, but I think I like Big Kick at 6-1 coming in second.
So those are some potential horses that you might be using on some kind of secondary tickets or to fill out your horse.
That's correct. Those 3 I like. I'll probably box them in some form.
Secretariat Stakes, a big name, good field, 3-year-olds on the turf. We've seen many of these horses throughout the years. Some have tried dirt, some have tried synthetic, but today I think we see them on their real surface at a nice distance, 10 furlongs, the Secretariat Stakes. First, let's start with you, Candice, on the Secretariat.
For me, to be honest, I was really excited to see Can't Help Believing move back up into stakes company, but it came out today that he was scratched from the race. So he's not 100%, and without him tempting me at what would have been a big price, I'm going to be boring here and go with Adelaide. To me, he's a clear standout in this race. Aidan O'Brien's even sends in Belisarius, who we know is going to be a pacemaker in here for him. I think he's very, very well meant in this spot. And, if we remember back, of course, Adelaide lost by a neck to Mr. Speaker in the Belmont Derby. He entered that race on short rest. He had just run at Royal Ascot. So there's no quick turnaround in play here. I just think he's the most talented horse. And, when Aidan O'Brien really has his horses well meant in this spot, you have to pay attention. So it's not going to be a great price, but to me, Adelaide is a single in here.
Ryan, how did you see the Secretariat Stakes?
I see it exactly the same way. I mean, there's nobody is better than Adelaide in this race. There's not even a chance to think that anybody is. I guess if you want to find a horse that you could throw in there an exacta or put in some exotics, Divine Oath, who's an 8-1 money line shot, morning line shot. He's run 6 strong races, and he is coming up in class today or on Saturday. But I do think that Adelaide wins this race easily with a hand right at the end. So Adelaide and then Divine Oath.
Any concerns with Adelaide? A lot of times they call it, they always say play the Euros off the plane and they regress in their second start. Do either one of you consider that angle at all?
I don't think it matters. I think he could regress a little bit off of that effort and still win here, to be honest. I mean, there's no Mr. Speaker this time around. I still think that a few of these American horses are questionable at this distance or at this class level. And even a horse like Divine Oath, I mean, he ran well last time out to win, but to be honest, I liked our channel better than him. I thought he ran a better race. So, I'm kind of really questioning, some of the American horses at this kind of a class level. I mean, Adelaide has put in 3 really strong efforts in a row now, one of which was over here, so it's just really tough for me to look past him.
I think Adelaide's going to be tough. I mean, he gets Ryan Moore. I'm going to give you a couple of horses that I kind of have to throw in there. I've had him in my stable mail at various times. One of them actually ran at Canterbury last year. His name was General Jack, and I thought he was actually going to be pointed for the Bluegrass this spring. He finally got it together with his last 2 races. He won 2 in a row on the turf. Now, granted, those were not as good of a quality races like this, but I do think he's in form, and I don't have any of those questions about, you know, is he in form and is he going to bounce? And so I just think at a huge price, I think he could outrun his odds and easily run in the money here. And then, you know, I also keep on coming back around to Sheldon. You know, that's a horse that took a long time to break his maiden. He kind of clunked up in the Belmont Derby, but I just think that, you know, he's still got the raw potential. So I wouldn't, you know, Adelaide is probably the obvious choice, but I think if you really want to blow up some tickets, I think those horses are usable. Ryan, any others that you actually considered might be using a little bit?
Yeah, I look at this global view, and I just he's a hit or miss kind of horse. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. He's got the stuff to get there, but the consistency is the big question. So it's a Jekyll and Hyde horse. You never know what you're going to get.
Candice, I know we've talked quite a bit about Global View. He's ran some good races, and his pedigree says he can get 10 furlongs, and I do know Mr. Proctor does well in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that, I know I took a stand before the Belmont Derby and said I thought that race was too far for him, and he really didn't do anything in there to make me question that at all. I will say that for me, if there is, you know, a horse at a big price that I think could get in the money, it's Highball. He had a lot of troubles early on in his last race, which was in the American Derby. He finished 3rd behind Divine Oath and our channel in there. So for him, you know, he had a bit of a wide trip and a bad start. You know, I thought that was pretty nice for him, and he's only ran 3 times, so, you know, compared to some of these others, he's pretty lightly raced, and, you know, maybe he can improve a little bit more still, where some of these others are, you know, a little bit more found out. I'm not sure he could beat Adelaide, but, you know, he's one who I definitely plan on using underneath myself at what I think will probably be a really big price. One horse we didn't mention, though none of us mentioned, was Tourist, who would probably be expected to maybe be second favorite behind Adelaide, but I couldn't have this horse at all. You know, not only is he moving up in class, but like I said, I'm pretty sure Belisarius is in here to be a pacemaker, and that's going to be really, really tough for Tourists. So, you know, maybe one to just say that for me is a big play against at what's going to be probably a pretty short price.
I agree with that 100%. I have him as a toss. I'm not even playing him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of public think that Belmont Derby was a better race than this, but I'm not so sure. I thought Adelaide ran well, and I think Mr. Speaker is a proven 10 furlong horse, but I had a lot more hopes for that race than it ended up being, and maybe it was just the distance or whatever it was that day, but I think we're going to actually see a better race and in the Secretariat here. I mean, I think Divine Oath is a solid 9 furlong horse. I think a couple of these horses can run better than their last races, and I think General Jack, for the first 8.5 to 9 furlongs, is going to run very well. I think he's in form, and sometimes you need a horse like that to kind of scare a couple of these horses into moving quicker and get, you know, they always say you need a fast pace and a good mid-race move in order to get a good solid finish, and maybe that'll prompt Adelaide, because I really wasn't that impressed with Adelaide's race. I thought he should have won that race, and Mr. Speaker kind of just rode the rail, and after the race the jockey kind of looked over and kind of knew that he'd messed up. So we'll see if Adelaide can get it done, and we'll see what happens here. Now the Beverly D, this one I think Ryan mentioned earlier, you like 9 of the 11 horses in the race, and Candice likes 4, so obviously you guys see this very contentious. Ryan?
Yeah, originally I just said just hit the all button, just bet them all in the multi-race bets. I narrowed it down to 9, and then I narrowed it down to 6. But if you want my top choice here, I'm going to go with the 9 horse. It's Alterite. This horse pressed the pace in the Diana, the G1 Diana. It was his first run off the shelf, her first run off the shelf. She finished 8th, which obviously is no good. In G1 races, she's got 4 starts, a win, a place, a show, and then obviously what she did last time out. But if you take a look at the race, she was obviously needed a race underneath her. She's 4-1 here in the morning line. I think you'll get a little higher odds. I think 6-1 might be about right. And I have her my top choice over a lot of other very good horses.
Candice, some of your initial thoughts.
Well, I'm glad he mentioned Alterite. That's my second choice. My first choice here is Just Judge. She's an Irish Classic winner from overseas, very consistent. If you look at her two most recent races this year, she finished third in both of them to a very nice horse named Thistlebird, who was pretty much in the form of her life before she just recently retired. So I don't think there's too much bad to look in as far as finishing third to her. She had several tussles last year with Sky Lantern. They had a little bit of a rivalry there. So, a lot of people, maybe a lot more people know who Sky Lantern is than just the judge. Like I said, she is a classic winner. This is absolutely her distance. Not worried at all about that. She can run on firm ground. She has done it, but there's potential for weather in the forecast. And if there is a little bit of cut in the ground, I think that's even better for her. And one big thing I wanted to make a point of is the weights. That a lot of times, and I know Craig and I have talked about this, but a lot of times the European runners run carrying a lot more weight than they do here. And this is going to be the case with Just the Judge. Her last race, which was a grade 1 overseas at the Curragh, she carried 136 pounds, and here she carries 123. So it's obviously a massive difference compared to what she's normally been running with. I think she's really well meant in this spot, and she's going to be my top choice here. But like I said, I do like 4. Alterite is my second choice. I've been a big fan of Tannery for a while, and I know her last race she was pretty rank, breaking from the outside post, and it just wasn't a good one. But, other than that, she's just so consistent. And, again, she's another one who I think just loves this distance, is just begging to go further than she's been going. And at the end, I'll throw in Euro Charlene. There's a lot of others I prefer ahead of her, but I know they've been wanting to get her out here in America to run for a little while now, so they must think that she would really take to running out here. And I do think that she'd benefit from going further than she's gone before. Her last race was a pretty nice one. She beat Kyoshi, who's kind of a clip horse of mine overseas. So those are going to be my 4: Just the Judge over Alterite, Tannery, and Euro Charlene.
Now, Somalia Lemonade comes in. A lot of these horses ran in the Diana race at Saratoga. And one of the things I mentioned right after that race is I said they could have ran that Diana 6 times and got 6 different winners. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it's not so much that Somalia Lemonade wasn't the best horse that day. It's just that now she's got to face those same horses on a different surface with a different pace scenario. And what are the odds of her repeating, especially if those odds are low? So a horse that was bet down the last time that didn't fire that day is my choice. I like Emollient. I didn't like her at all in the Diana for whatever reason. I just said it wasn't her day. But, this is the type of horse that I just think they get ready for the summer, and she's got enough speed to lay in the top half of the field, but every once in a while she just runs a big race. So I think she has potential. What are some of your thoughts out of, Stephanie's Kitten was closing, quote unquote, in the Diana, but does that really mean anything, Rick? Ryan?
Yeah, that's okay. No worries. This is Stephanie's Kitten's 4th race this year. She did close pretty great in the Dana. She had a tough trip, really, if you look at the trip. It wasn't the best trip that she could have. At 7-2, she doesn't really have as much value as Somali Lemonade, who's 6-1. I think I would prefer Somali Lemonade over Stephanie's Kitten.
Candice, any reason why those horses should reverse, or Somali Lemonade? I mean, Somali Lemonade seems to run a race every time.
Yeah, she definitely does. I don't know how much I love her coming out of the outside post position because, she's going to go for the lead, and she might have to work a little bit harder to get there, especially with other speed in this field with I'm Already Sexy and Latia and Emollient. So, I mean, I think she's going to get out to the front. She's going to give it what she has, but I'm just a little bit worried that she's going to have to put in a little bit more effort than she normally would have to get that lead. Being that she's breaking from the outside like that. Emollient, I like her. She just seems like she's been a little bit tough to win with. Though she does always put in a pretty honest performance. I didn't really like how she, ran the Diana, and I'm just really not sure about her going a little bit further here either, to be honest. Stephanie's Kitten did run really nice, but I kind of agree with Ryan. Like at 7-2, I just don't see the value for a horse who is not consistent at all. Like she could go out here and run a big race, and I don't think it would surprise a lot of people, but it probably wouldn't surprise people either if she ran really bad. Like she's just kind of a really hit or miss type, and I would have to have her at a much bigger price like that to consider her. So at 7-2, she's really hard to justify for me.
What about Ryan? I'm Already Sexy. She's the local horse, and she's 4 for 4 over the Arlington lawn.
Yeah, she is, and she's not going to be 4 for 4 anymore. I don't think she's really has a chance here. If you want a horse that has no real good back class that has a chance to hit the board here, Latia, the 7 horse, is 15-1. I think she might be in the exotics, whether 3rd or 4th. So that's a horse I'll be looking to play a little bit, Latia.
Overall, a good solid field for the Beverly D, and some years we've had some prices. Some years, usually what I remember seeing mostly about the Beverly D is you usually look up at the odds board, and there's like 5 horses at 5-1. Usually that's kind of how the Beverly D goes. So I think a lot of players that like to spread and the multi-race players like that because it doesn't really matter who wins in the end. Even though a horse is quote-unquote 7-2 on the board, they're all going to be 5-1 because everybody's going to use all 6 of them in the pick 3s and pick 4s.
I agree.
All right, the Arlington Million. This is the granddaddy of them all. Traditionally, some solid horses have won this race. We've had horses repeat, and this year, I think, in terms of quality of the field, it may not. Last year we had 13 horses in the race, but this year, Ryan, not only do we got the defending champ, we've also got the Breeders' Cup Turf horse in this race.
Correct. This is my race. I've been looking forward to this race since June when I decided I was coming out here. I'm going to be making my first ever $500 win bet on a horse here. Never done anything like that before, so it's going to be exciting for me either way. I'd like to talk about all the entrants here. There's only 7, so we should take a little bit of time. Okay.
All right. Let's start right from the top then. Let's hear right from post position number 1.
Okay, first of all, Hardest Core starting at 20-1. It's a 4-year-old by Hard Spun. He has $248,000 in earnings in 10 starts, so that's not too terrible. But he's never won anything more than a $50,000 stakes. It was non-graded. This is his first non-graded stakes, and I do believe that although he doesn't have a shot to win the race, his presence will affect the dynamics. He should get out and fight for the lead with Side Glance. And how quickly and for how long those two duel will be the key to the pace scenario of this race.
All right, Candice, take us with the 2-hole then.
Number 2 is Smoking Sun. This is my top choice in the race. He's an American bred by Smart Strike, but he's been running over in France, French trained. He's pretty consistent. He won first time out this year and a Group 2 over at Longchamp. He struggled a little bit after that in a Grade 1, but it was over softer ground, which isn't really to his liking. And it was a really tough race. That race, if you remember, was run by Circe Aglas in a duel with Trev, who, of course, won the ARC last year. So it wasn't like he was running against chumps by any means. But he came back from that in a really big way, finishing a very nice second to Dan Excel. Over in Singapore, Dan Excel is a Group 1 winner. Over in Hong Kong, a dual Group 3 winner over in England and Ireland. So, he's running within, with the top company. I think that he's a horse who, if this comes down to a turn of foot race, it could really be, his for the taking. I think he's going to be a fair price because his name isn't, quite as known as a few of the others in here. And, I think he's really well meant in the spot. He's a horse who we've heard, about coming here for quite some time. So Smoking Sun from the 2-hole is my top choice.
Nice. Now, for me, I'm going to quick talk about the 3, and then we'll kind of continue to go around the field. My keynotes for Magician, for me, I like the fact that he gets Joseph O'Brien in the saddle. I also think 10 furlongs is a good distance for him. I know he's won further, and I know he's won shorter. I also think the small field could work against him. I think he definitely is one of those horses that likes a good cover, so I'm wondering a little bit about that. And then also, that last race, I watched that a couple of times, and I'm just tossing that race out. So for me, I think you got to throw out the last race. I worry a little bit about the cover, but I think this is a good overall distance for Magician. Ryan, take us to horse number 4.
Well, horse number 4 is Finnegan's Wake, and the last time we saw him, he won the prep for this race, the Arlington Handicap. He also raced in last year's Arlington Million. This is his 4th try at 10 furlongs here on this course. If you look back at his last race, the final time was 2 minutes, 5 seconds, and 42, which would be, in the last 10 years, the slowest Arlington Million. I respect Dale Romans, and I think putting Ryan Moore up on top is a great idea. But the short field exposes him, and being 2 seconds slower than the best here, the lack of traffic will dictate a faster pace than he's used to. I don't think he has much chance to win, but look for him to press the pace behind Side Glance and Hardest Core. He won't be able to keep up, and near the end of the race, you'll see him going backwards as the closers kick in.
Candice, what can you tell me about Up with the Birds?
Up with the Birds is our Canadian friend. He's coming down south to Chicago, and he most recently won the Grade 2 Nijinsky. That's over at Woodbine, and beat a pretty good field there over Dynamic Side, over River 7, who we've seen run down here on the dirt a couple times. You know, he always seems to keep top company, you know, whether he's running here or up in Canada. And, you know, for me, I just think he's interesting because he's a horse who really seems to be rounding into form. And that's one thing we talked about even for the preview day here at Arlington, is some of these horses, you know, they might not be coming into these races with the best form, but you know they're well meant in this spot, and I think that's definitely the case with Up with the Birds.
All right, for my analysis on Real Solution, I guess my keynotes were this. You know, he's the defending champion. You know, some people question whether he can close the deal. He finally did the last time. There's a lot of chatter that maybe that Manhattan was a key race because we've seen a couple winners come out of there, so it may be better than it looked on paper. It was a nice final time, so I do like that. Also, you know, he is a kitten, not named a kitten, but on these big days, they seem to show up. So I think that is a key factor. One of the negative things I have about him is I think he may have missed a work. And I'm a firm believer I don't like it when horses kind of alter schedules or have to reschedule their prep races. So that worries me a little bit. And Ryan, number 7, Side Glance. Kind of the skinny on this guy.
Well, Side Glance, he's coming back. He raced in the Million last year. He got up near the front. He made a move late. He was 3rd best. The last time out in the G1 United Nations at Monmouth, he was also 3rd. But the entries here in this race have a lot more class than the United Nations, I believe. He is a 7-year-old gelding. He's had 5 races this year. He's only had 1 show. Check to see if he's going to have Lasix. He's only been on Lasix twice, and both times he finished 3rd. He's going to be forwardly placed. His only chance to win is if he gets out front and steals the race. I don't think that's a very likely scenario, but that would be his best chance to win.
All right, now Candice, first I want to get your pace scenario, and then we'll have Ryan lead us from the turn to the finish line and reveal who his big bet is going to be on. But Candice, you know, I don't see a lot of pace in this race, so you walk me through your pace analysis and who's going to lead going into the turn as they turn for home.
I agree. I don't see a lot of pace in here either. I see Hardest Core leading them around with Side Glance just behind. I think this is going to be a pretty slow start, but I think it's going to be a bunched up field. And so to me, this turns into a turn-a-foot race. So that's one reason why I went with Smoking Sun, who I think has a fantastic turn-a-foot. I completely agree with your analysis of Magician. I think he is a horse who greatly benefits from having a full field, and he's not going to get that here, which is why I'm against him at a short price. And I also don't, like you said, that you do like that he has Joseph O'Brien aboard. I don't, because he had Ryan Moore aboard in the Breeders' Cup Turf, and I mean, maybe this is just me personally, but I think Ryan Moore's a little bit better jockey. So, you know, I know that obviously Joseph O'Brien is their #1 jock for his dad, but I would have actually preferred to see him with Ryan Moore here. For me, like I said, my top choice is Smoking Sun. I will say I had a very hard time choosing between him and Real Solution here. Both of, like I said, I thought Smoking Sun is very well meant in the spot, and I think the same for Real Solution. I really think that, you know, from when he won it last year in the DQ, that he's been pointed for this race ever since then. I do agree that I'm a little worried about the works. I don't quite know what happened there. It seemed like he got a break maybe after the Manhattan, some time off, and then, you know, I don't know what happened if that was planned or not, but it did seem a little bit weird. But it's hard to deny his races this year. I was at the Man of War where he finished second. I thought he was the best horse in that field that day, considering that he came from off the pace against what was a really slow pace that Imagining set there. And then he came back and made good in the Manhattan. And like you said, the form in that race has since come up very strong, with Kai Gun winning last weekend up at Woodbine, and then Seek again, of course, winning at Saratoga. So, it's hard to deny his form coming in here. But I do think Real Solution will be a favorite in here, potentially a heavy favorite. And for that reason, I put Smoking Sun on top. But to me, the two are pretty much equal, and I'll be using both.
All right, Ryan, a couple of things here. Kind of take us what you see the field is going to be at the top of the stretch, and then kind of reveal, who you're going to be betting here, your big wager, and then, I think a lot of times, I think people are interested in the psychology of why you feel this is such a good wagering opportunity. So kind of go with what's leading you to this plunge here.
Okay. First of all, the reason behind it, I mean, I'm confident in the horse. I really believe the horse is going to win. I just wanted to make my trip to Arlington special. I wanted to make the Million to be a special race. I've got the bullets to fire. I'm going to fire a $500 win bet. And I believe that the winner of this race is going to be last or second to last come the top of the stretch. But we have three big closers in this race. Three horses that can come from the back. One is Up With the Birds, who I think is going to do well. The other is Smoking Sun, who I think is going to do well. But my $500 win bet is going to be on Real Solution. I disagree with Candice. I don't think he's going to be the odds-on favorite. I think Magician will get a lot of money since he won the Breeders' Cup. Real Solution finished 9th in that race in the BC Turf last year against him. The Apache beat him last year, and the only reason that Real Solution won is because the Apache was disqualified. Real Solution hasn't raced in 70 days, but I do believe that he and Up With the Birds are going to fight for last. They like to see them all. And at the top of the stretch, he should stalk Magician. He'll outrun him. He'll pass a tiring side glance and hardest core. And as long as he's wary of Smoking Sun and Up With the Birds, I think your next Arlington Million winner is going to be the same as last year, Real Solution.
Great. My pick is Up With the Birds. I like this horse a lot. I've kind of, he was kind of one of those horses I was looking at last year, and I wanted to, Stormy Atlantics really liked the turf, and some of the really good long-distance turf horses really developed later on. So I was kind of looking forward to his 4-year-old campaign. He kind of got off to a slow start, but that last race at Woodbine, that was the real deal. Now, did he beat this type of quality? No. But to me, how I handicap it is I know or at least I think the talent is there. So to me, if the talent is there, then he just has to step up in class and do a good stretch run here. I'm a little worried about the pace of the race. I think we could see a 1:15 for 6. And if that's set by side glance, he's probably going to be tougher than some people think. He's one of those world trotters, but actually that Atlantic City race wasn't, or the last race in Monmouth wasn't that bad. And he has got a little bit of grit to him. And if you give him 1:15 and change, and he's feeling his oats on Saturday, he'll look a couple of horses in the eye before he'll give up. So I just could see him being salty if it is a 1:15 and change. If they go 1:14 or 1:13 and 3, which Finnegan's Wake should be able to do, I agree with you, Ryan, that he should be able to maybe go near that pace. But I like Up With the Birds as my top pick, but I think something goofy could happen with the pace here, real goofy. I remember one year we had a Million pace of 1:14. I remember another year at the Sword Dancer it was like 1:18, and then it's not really a turn of foot. It's just kind of who's in position and who gets in each other's way.
Yeah, I agree. I think the three, like I said before, the three horses that have that gear that can overcome that is Real Solution, Up With the Birds, and then again Smoking Sun. So I think that the race finishes Real Solution first, Up With the Birds second, Smoking Sun third, and I think Magician's fourth, and then the rest are last.
All right. So how do you kind of key your pick 4, Ryan? Are you going to key a middle leg and then go deep in the Beverly D?
I'm going to, in the last two legs, I'm going with Chad Brown and Castellano. I'm going to go with the 9 horse in the Beverly D. I'm going to go with Real Solution here. We're going to single in the Secretariat, Adelaide, and then the first race, I think I had the 3 that I mentioned in the first race. St. Leger, I'm going to go with back kick or big kick, Dandino, and the Pizza Man. So 3, 1, 1, and 1.
Nice. And Candice, any particular strategy you're going to use for the pick 4?
I'm not that brave to choose 3, 1, 1, 1. I think mine is going to be 2, 1, 4, 2. But I mentioned them all on here, so.
Good, good. Now we go to the Alabama. I wanted to quick talk about the Spa. Let's first talk about probably the big favorite, repull, the prep, stop shopping, stop charging, stop spending. We got all of these different horses. How do you see the Alabama, Candice?
Well, I think that Stopchargingmaria is going to be a very heavy favorite coming off of that last run, the Coaching Club of America Oaks here at Saratoga. But I really don't like her here that much. I think that she was very, very well meant in that spot in particular. So I expect her to regress a little bit off that effort. I also don't like her going further. I think that 9 furlongs really is her distance. So I don't really love her going 10 furlongs here. Though my pick isn't that much more exciting, I'm going to go with Unbridled Forever, who finished second. She was a well-beaten second last time out, but I do think the added distance gives her a little bit more of an advantage here, and so I'm going to expect her to reverse her form this time around in, I guess, their battle number 2. But I do think this is an interesting race as far as who could finish underneath. I think there's a couple horses and got lucky, and Fortune Pearl and even Size, who could maybe have something to say about who finishes second or third here.
Ryan, any thoughts on the Alabama?
Yeah, this isn't a race that I look too much at, but here's the thing: is all of these horses I've bet on before. I've bet on almost every one of them. Stopchargingmaria, I think, is going to be the favorite, and I think has the best chance to win. I really like Fortune Pearl. I think Fortune Pearl is going to be a very big horse in the division next year for fillies and mares. I like Fortune Pearl to 6, and then you have to go with the Pletcher horse, Got Lucky. So I like the 5, I like the 6, and like the 8. And if you're going to throw in a horse just for fun, there's nothing wrong with Joint Return. So 8, 5, 6, 4 for me.
Well, for me, yeah, it pretty much has to be Unbridled Forever. The last time she just got so much steam and everybody picked her. And I've been way too soon on too many horses this year, one race too late. So I'm sticking with her. I do believe every once in a while the best horse wins. Stopchargingmaria was totally pointed for that last race. That was a totally repull. Pletcher, get her ready, win that race so he could have the 100 people in the winner's circle. And now it's back to reality at a distance. And I just think she fired her best race, and I wouldn't be surprised if actually she runs off the board. I just think that was just a freak-out performance, and I don't think she's going to duplicate it again. So I like Unbridled Forever. She has been a little bit disappointing. I could see Joint Return, too. Every once in a while she does run a big race. So actually Joint Return would be kind of the oddball, but I somehow think she kind of fits in a race like this. America and a couple of those other ones just don't do anything for me. So I'd rather go with a Joint Return if I was going to lean anybody outside Unbridled Forever. So you guys are going to be in Chicago. Ryan, what about you? Are you a rail bird? Do you like to walk from the paddock to the track? How do you kind of do a day at the races?
I'm versatile. I'm very versatile. Sometimes I like to go the backside. Sometimes I like to go and take a look in the barns, and sometimes I like to sit at the rail, and sometimes I just like to sit up in the sometimes the press box, and sometimes in the grandstand. I haven't really decided what we're going to do here. I'm going to be there Friday and Saturday just to take in the sights and the sounds of Arlington Park. Everything from what I've heard is it's a beautiful place, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'll see you there, Candice.
Yep.
All right, Candice, for you, kind of any, I know you kind of tend to walk around the track, and I know when you're actually at the races, I know you like to look more a little bit at the body language and stuff.
Yeah, I usually get into like a serious mode where I'm like running back and forth between like the parade ring and then the track, and sometimes I can't always make it back, but I always try to make sure that I see the horses parade before they get on track, especially in a day like this, because there will be a few horses. I mean, like Real Solution, I've seen him a few times now. Magician, I've seen in person before, so it's kind of hard to tell how they're feeling when it's a horse you never seen before. But for me, knowing I've seen a few of these guys within the last 6 months or so, it gives me a little bit of a baseline to compare off of as far as their looks. So I'll definitely be paying a lot of attention to that.
Well, we look forward to the big day of wagering, and of course in the Arlington Million, Ryan, his largest wager of the year in the defending champ Real Solution, hoping to get 3-1, 7-2. Candice says to go with Smoking Sun, and I think the race is going to the birds. So up with the birds, strong stretch kick, and I do think we're in for a great finish, but it does worry me a little bit about the fractions because immediately after the race, I think sometimes people quickly judge the final time, and you really have to, I mean, I think we can have a good race if 4 or 5 horses really put in a good stretch kick. I just hope it doesn't become a merry-go-round race if it gets too slow.
Yep.
So we're looking forward to the results. So thanks again. Ryan is going to be at the Arlington this weekend, joining us on this week of Down to the Wire. Candice, she'll be in Chicago as well. We'll get the recap of that journey next week. Follow Candice on CHair889 on Twitter. Also next week, a big week coming up, we go to the Paint in the Canoe, the Travers Stakes, and the Pacific Classic. So it should be another fun edition of Down to the Wire next week. Thanks again for joining us on Down to the Wire.